learn through your mistakes, and mistakes are always costly. Anyone telling you the best way to learn is by failing is an absolute fool. Do not listen to that. That's not even biblical wisdom. The best way to learn is not by making mistakes, because mistakes always cost you. You don't have to lose your finger to learn to not touch a stove. You can simply say, "Hey Siri, what happens if you touch a stove?" No, not you, Siri. You can say, "What happens if you..."
It's 4 p.m.
You can say, "What happens if you touch a stove while it's hot?" And she'll tell you you'll burn your finger, and then you don't do it. Whereas someone else had to lose their finger to learn that lesson. Now, both of you learned the principle, but one of you had to lose a finger to learn the principle. That's how mistakes work. You can learn through mistakes, but it always costs you if you have to make the mistake first. It is like a student who, I'll give you a very clear example. There are students who attained high levels of academic excellence. I'm sure there are students in Harvard who have never failed a test in their life, ever. They don't know what it even tastes like to even fail a test. They never got less than an A- in school ever in their life. That's why they have a 5.0 weighted GPA. Absolute academic perfection and excellence. And then there are students who they never had anybody to mentor them and to teach them how to value intellectual development, how to value academic excellence. And so they had to go through school and fail many tests, fail many quizzes, get a lot of low grades before they learned not to procrastinate, not to hang around the wrong people, to pay attention during the lectures. They had to learn all of these principles through failure. Now, ultimately, both of them learned the principles. This student who's going to Harvard never had to fail any tests, never had to, fail any quizzes. They already learned how to succeed academically without having to fail anything. Now, when they both make the application for Harvard, this one has a 3.4 GPA because in their entire academic career, all the failures are recorded. The blemishes are on the record, even though in the end, they finally learned to study well, to prepare well for tests. But at the time in which they had learned it, they had already made mistakes that they can't wipe away. So their GPA will be permanently affected. They can't get a 4.0 GPA. They've already made so many mistakes. So they have a 3.4. This one never failed a test. They didn't have to learn through mistakes. They had parents to drill these principles in them. We don't expect anything less than an A+ in this household. You don't procrastinate. You study, so they're teaching and instilling and inculcating these values and principles to that child at a young age before they even take any tests. When they both are at the end of their high school careers, this one will have a 5.0 weighted GPA. This one will have a 3.4, even though at the end, both of them learn the principles. The difference is this one had to learn through failures. They didn't have a parent to inculcate these values. So they had to fail so many tests before they learned the lesson of not procrastinating and not waiting until the last day to study. They never made those mistakes because they had those values. When they both stand before Harvard, who makes it in? This student does. Even though at the end they both got the lessons, but this one had to learn through mistakes. It always cost this person. And this person won't be able to rise the way this person rises. It's always better to not have to make the mistake because you have the advantage of not having to lose what a man will lose if you make certain mistakes. You don't have to lose your fingers to learn not to touch stoves. You don't have to fail tests to learn not to procrastinate. That's why we have such a value for knowledge in the kingdom. The Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." Knowledge and building knowledge is a kingdom value. It is something that's integral to kingdom living. Being doggedly committed to your pursuit of knowledge. It is knowledge of what to do that produces success. I completely disregard that principle of the best way to learn is through your failures. It's absolute nonsense. You wouldn't go to a student and say, fail tests so you can learn not to procrastinate. No teacher says that. It's nonsense. You don't go to a classroom and say, yeah, you guys have to fail so many tests before you... No, there are students that never failed any tests. They didn't have to. They already know not to procrastinate. They already know not to joke around when you're listening to your teacher teach. You pay attention, you take your notes, so forth and so on. They already have the principles.